In this Anzac centenary year, there have been books, movies and TV series, musical compositions, interviews, readings from diaries, exhibitions of artefacts, and perhaps most powerfully, of photographs, all recording or reflecting upon that war that was supposed to end all wars. There are even web albums of photos of priests celebrating Mass in war zones, including at least 2 photos of Australian soldiers at Mass in the trenches of Gallipoli. Other snaps show servicemen at Masses offered in the ruins of villages or in open fields during the French campaigns of that war. The unknown soldier at the back of our cathedral would not have felt out of place amidst those ancient rites. There are, of course, such photos from many wars. The most historic dates from the American Civil War. A simple wooden cross fronts a tent serving as a sanctuary. Outside, the priest preaches to attentive soldiers, as well as ladies with parasols. From Normandy, soon after D-Day, we see a snapshot of troops kneeling as the priest whispers the canon, the bonnet of a jeep, his altar. In another, the priest celebrates Mass for soldiers in the shell of Cologne Cathedral. A third has a Marine piously receiving Holy Communion on the Japanese island of Iwo Jima. There are also shots of Masses in more recent theatres of combat, including a priest in Afghanistan in 2010 offering Mass on an altar of cardboard boxes. All these images speak powerfully of the role of a priest of Jesus Christ, and so to our soon-to-be priests. Happily, our nation is not torn asunder by war or civil strife. Our cathedral is not a shell of its former glory. Our altar, not made of cardboard boxes. Our people, not praying in fear for the day ahead. We live in peace and offer Mass in thanksgiving, even as we know that many of our Christian brothers and sisters in other parts of the world are not so fortunate. Catholics, at least in urban Australia, have the comfort of the sacraments available almost any time. Most have daily Mass at several locations within a few minutes' drive, and generous priests ready to baptise, absolve, preach, educate, marry, pray, anoint, console, and bury them. All in that peace zone that is Sydney. Yet the priests of Sydney today are indeed called to serve in a war zone. Our Christian tradition from the earliest days spoke of a mortal combat with the world, the flesh, and the devil. Such dark talk might not be fashionable today, but the challenges of striving for holiness are there for Christians in every age. Our own passions, weaknesses, temptations, being drawn every which way by our peers, technologies, culture, cultural and ideological forces surrounding us both for good and evil. We give thanks that we are safe to celebrate Mass in this city, but we know that even Sydney-siders are not immune to violence. this very cathedral has had 2 memorial services for victims of terror over the past year alone. Nor are we immune to the forces in our ambient culture hostile to our faith, or more subtly corrosive of Christian souls. In some places, the problem is fundamentalist theists, who insist that their interpretation of their faith tradition is the only acceptable belief for any human being, and who dream of imposing some sort of caliphate in which all religious difference and indifference is wiped out. Here in Australia, on the other hand, the problem is more often fundamentalist atheists who dream of a secular caliphate in which all religious belief is eradicated from law, institutions such as marriage, culture, and the human heart. That one of our Sydney priests, now Archbishop of Hobart, has been taken to his state's anti-discrimination tribunal for having the audacity to distribute a bishop's pastoral on marriage shows just how far things have gone or might go if we are not alert and active. Yet even these contests are first and foremost internal ones, as we are tempted too enthusiastically either to flee or to fight, to put first our natural desire to be right and not care about who is excluded or hurt in the process, or to put first our equally natural desire to be loved and call inactivity in defence of the faith inclusiveness. To contend with all this, our scriptures and tradition advise us to pray always, receive the sacraments, cultivate virtue, persevere in good works, and ask the angels and saints for their intercession. St. Paul suggests we kit up with godly armour, girding our loins with the camo pants of truth, our chests with the khaki of righteousness, our feet with the boots of peace, our heads with the helmets of salvation, with faith as our flak jacket and the Spirit as our gun. Like Paul, Pope Francis is not shy to use sporting or military metaphors for the spiritual life. He regularly talks of our contest with the devil and with evil. One of his favourite ways of describing the Church is as a field hospital after battle. Today, according to our Holy Father, the Church needs to be near people with open wounds or deep scars from one kind of combat or another, ready to soothe and heal them with the tender mercy of God. So he challenges us to identify those on the existential peripheries, those in the spiritual and emotional war zones in our own parishes and city. In just a few weeks, the Church will mark the Golden Jubilee of Presbyterorum Ordinis, the Second Vatican Council's decree on the ministry and life of priests. That document makes clear the indispensable role of priests in the Church. Priests mediate the mercy of God to his people, offer sacrifice and absolve sins in Christ's name, preach the prophetic word like Jeremiah in our first reading. Guard and shepherd their flock like Peter in our epistle. Tend not only the full-grown sheep, but also the lambs, as Christ commands in our gospel. For such a beautiful mission, for such life and death work, the Church needs you. Gustavo, Danny, Maita, and Josh. Our ordinands today hail from 4 continents: the Americas, Asia, Europe, and Australia. They are truly an international peacekeeping force. Our Ecuadorian, Gustavo, comes from a small family by the standards of the Neo-Catechumenal Way. He is 9th of only 15 children. An electronics technician, he discerned his vocation to the priesthood in the Way, and through his formation has come to know the Christ who defends, protects, seduces, and provides for him. Aware of his own poverty of spirit, he wants to proclaim God's unconditional love to a world crying out for love. Danny grew up Christian alongside Hindus and Muslims in the slums of India. He had work as an electrician and many friends, but admits he was lonely and unfulfilled, not really knowing what being a Christian meant. Then he encountered the Way and heard that all Christians must bear witness to the gospel. He learned to look not at himself, but at God's action in the world. If he was to do that, he had to conquer his resentments, receive God's mercy, and discern his personal vocation. In his priesthood, he will help others who are lost to discover the way, the truth, and the life, who is Jesus Christ. Our Croatian, Marta, in Australianese, G'day mate, was what we call a late vocation. His restless soul could find no peace in studies, relationships, or career. Then at a youth gathering of the Neo-Catechumenal Way, he discovered life's meaning is found in the crucified one. At the Redemptoris Mater Seminary here in Sydney, he has learnt to trust entirely in God. Now, after many years in formation, he will communicate that trust to those at the existential peripheries in Sydney and beyond. Joshua comes from Sydney. After his family and university chaplaincy nurtured his faith, he was blessed to find the Emmanuel community who encouraged him to become himself by giving himself away to others. World Youth Day revealed to him the profound happiness that can come from a serious Catholic life. At the Good Shepherd Seminary, he learnt that all true priests are mission men, not mere maintenance men. He will carry out that mission in Sydney, opening up the field hospital of the Church to the battle-weary and offering them the freedom, peace, and abiding joy of communion with God and his saints. Like those priests immortalised in the photos of masses amidst war, Josh, Marta, Danny and Gustavo will be right there in the thick of the action of life, accompanying, teaching, feeding and forgiving God's people in their struggles, being soldiers for the faith and doctors in the field hospital of the Church. For this task in this Anzac centenary year, I now commission 4 new officers for Christ.